Masterclass. Original versus non-original, or meta versus unique, right? Whatever term you want to use to refer to the idea of. I mean, rogue decks is another term that a lot of people like to use when it comes to like a deck that's unique. So I guess meta versus rogue, technically. And the funny thing about rogue is that rogue tends to become meta. So there's that. Sometimes some rogue decks was meta at one point, and people just, passed it, right? They start playing other things, and then eventually that meta deck came back, right? That deck that was meta at one point came back, and then people just started calling it rogue, and it's like, this is an old meta deck, but okay, whatever. It's rogue in the current meta, right? Because you got meta decks that are meta, right? That means they're popular. Not that they're good, that they're popular at that point in time. Rogue decks are less popular decks, but both decks are equally good for playing, right? Because any deck is good competitively, or just good, period. It depends more on the player than anything. But in this scenario, in this situation that I'm trying to talk about, is the idea of playing something that's unique versus playing something that's not unique, like an archetype, right? Playing an archetype versus not playing an archetype. Most players, especially in the Dragon Ball Super community, they like playing a lot of the archetypes that comes out in new sets. So with that, right, so they like to play certain specific archetypes, like the Gamma deck, as you can see up here, Gamma versus Dripku, right? And those are archetype decks, right? Those are decks that have certain leaders and certain cards that synergize with the leader, which is okay, right? Because that's just a pre-built strategy, and that's the idea, that it's a pre-built strategy. So a way to describe the concept of meta versus an original deck, an original build, is the idea of think about Mortal Kombat, right? You have Scorpion, Sub-Zero. So Scorpion, Sub-Zero, they are pre-built characters, right? They're essentially an archetype, right? You got the Sub-Zero archetype and you got the Scorpion archetype as an example. While an original deck, right, would mix the two, right? It's essentially what's called a build a character. So imagine if you could build a character in a Mortal Kombat game. So then you can take the characteristics of Sub-Zero and Scorpion and put it into one character and create a whole new character based off of that. So sometimes some people call this concept hybrid, like a hybrid deck in most card games. I mean, I heard that term a lot in Yu-Gi-Oh! Whenever I would take certain archetypes and mix them together, they would be called a hybrid deck. And I was obviously known for doing that a lot. So that was the thing. So yeah, I would do that. Not only that I did take certain archetypes and put them, splash them together and make them synergize, I also would take just different concepts I had from different decks and just and then merge them, right? Found common things in the decks that work for both decks, right? And then put the deck together, because staples, like a lot of the cards that they use in every deck, since both decks have those staple cards, and the only thing that makes the decks different are some of the special cards that makes them different. It's like, I could take these 3 cards from this deck, these 3 cards from that deck, put them together, then take all the staples, right, and build a whole new deck, which is a combination of both the decks. So as you can see here, this incorporates some of my old strategies. Some other people could be like, oh yeah, I've done the Fearless Pan thing. Yeah, Fearless Pan, but with Gogeta and with Gotenks, right? So you got a mixture of old and new. So with this type of build, Shout outs to Nino Machado. He was the one who pointed out the idea of being I point out the idea of being unique, which is part of what inspired this video, was the idea of like, yes, being unique is a win con in itself because of the fact that your opponent doesn't know what's in your deck, so it'd be hard for them to side against you. It'd be hard for them to predict your plays, your moves, play lines. That gives you an advantage. One of the ironies, okay, so there's a lot of pros to being unique, right? To building a deck from scratch and even mix matching strategies and archetypes together to build a whole new deck, as opposed to just trying to play all the Gogeta cards. You just play a couple Gogeta cards and then put in a whole bunch of red and green good stuff, right? And then just build a whole different deck. Is the fact that a con for it would be the fact that I lost train of thought. The con would be damn, I lost train of thought. Give me a second. Let me pause. Yeah, there we go. One of the cons of having a unique deck, right, is the fact that because your opponent doesn't know what's in your deck, that will cause a lot of scenarios where your opponent will be constantly asking, oh, what does that do, what does that do, they'll be, because you have the element of surprise, right? You're playing stuff that is not commonly played. You're playing cards in a deck that most people don't expect you to play. I remember a scenario when I was playing an Ice Barrier deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! This is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Story. In Yu-Gi-Oh! I was playing an Ice Barrier deck, and the whole idea is to bring out Totally Awesome, which is a monster that can negate card effects. So that was the main strategy. And the funny thing is, my opponent was was playing meta, and obviously he net decked it and tried to do some herper dirt, but I kept stopping a lot of his main stuff. But he was able to still put some stuff on the board, and he was expecting it to stay on the board, and he thought he was doing good, but doesn't realize he was doing very bad. Because I already know how his deck works. He doesn't know how my deck works, but I know how his deck works. So because I played the deck before, as well as because I built the deck before, so I already know a lot of the strategies and stuff, a lot of stuff that the archetype could do. So I know the strengths and weaknesses and whatnot. But anyway, point is, I just knew how to play against the deck, how to beat it. So I weakened this deck enough to the point that when it was my turn, I played a card called Regeki, which has the ability to just board wipe my opponent's battle, monster cards, right? So I did, and of course he just flipped the fuck out, just in the chat, just flipping the fuck out about the fact that I even used the card. And it's like, who uses that? Who uses that card in a water deck, or who uses that card in a going first deck? Blah 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 blah. He was just, because he was saying that the card that I used was a going second card. It's something you quote unquote would use if your opponent went first in the game and you went second, then it's a going second card, right? It's a good card if you go second, yes, but it's not like you have to. So that's just going with the idea of, like, you see how some people are just obsessed with the idea of, like, you have to play a certain way. So if something is classified as a quote-unquote going second card, and I don't disagree that it's technically a going second card, right? It's a card that works best after your opponent establishes the board you played, but it can be played at any time. It can be played at any time, except going first, right? Obviously, but any time after turn one, it's a useful card. It works. He's just mad that it worked. That's the thing. He's mad that I had it and he wasn't expecting it. That's the thing, because he thought he knew what was in my deck. He thought he knew, and that's the thing. He was trying to tell me how my deck works, what I should and shouldn't have in my deck. So the fact that he was complaining like, oh, that card doesn't go in that deck, blah blah blah. Yes, it does. It goes in there. You know why? Because look what it just did. It did exactly what I needed it to do. Clear your board for me to go for game. That's what it's supposed to do. That's why it's in the deck. Don't tell me what my deck is and isn't. Don't tell me, and that's the thing. It's trying to tell me what my deck is when you don't know what my deck is, because you're not the one who built it. I built it. But this whole mindset of like, meta decks, this meta deck, that, net deck, and net deck, and net decking, that everybody likes to think they know everything, right? So with that mindset of the whole net decking thing, right? Then when somebody does something unique, somebody builds something different, one, it does catch people off guard. But the other thing is, sometimes you'll get hate for playing something different just because people want stuff that's predictable. They expect something to be predictable, right? So anytime you present something that's you present something that's unpredictable, it triggers people. Especially nowadays, people get so triggered over words, over images, right? Over anything. Like, people just want to be butthurt, which gives me the impression there's like everybody over the age of 20 right now. Well, let me rephrase that. Anybody under the age of 40 are definitely mentally still 5-year-olds, because I'm seeing less and less adults, less and less men and women in this world. I see a whole bunch of grown-ass children, but, right, grown-ass people, right, referring to themselves as they're grown ass, but it's like, yeah, you are an ass, that's for sure, but grown as in an adult, no. You still have a lot of mental growing up to do. There's many people out there with mental issues, unfortunately, and some just ignorant. But anyway, then you get, like I said, it's like being unique. Well, let's just focus on card game aspect. Being unique has its benefits in the regards that game one, because your deck's unique, you have the element of surprise, right? Your opponent doesn't know how your deck works until after they play against you game one, right? And more likely you're going to win because of the element of surprise, because they don't know what your deck can and can't do. So that already gives you an advantage, right? They can't play test against your deck if they never played against your deck, right? That's more reason. That's the pro of having a unique deck. No one knows what's in your deck because they've never seen it before until they see it for the first time, which is when they play against you, right? So that, right? So you're more often than not, you're gonna win game one because your opponent doesn't know what your deck does, which is good. You're gonna take advantage of that, right? It's a strategy, it's a tactic, it works. Why not use it, right? Why not take advantage of it? This is why it's always important. I mentioned before about the idea of being unique. It's like you always want to try new cards, right? Different cards, older cards people haven't seen in a long time, and try them out with these newer decks and see how it works out. And if they work and they have synergy with the with the new decks, with whatever you're playing, well, that's good, obviously. Gotta love synergy, consistency, right? But at the same time is the fact, because they're old, right, and people haven't seen them in a long time, that right there would give you an element of surprise that will confuse people, and that will throw them off. It's like, oh damn, didn't expect that, oh shit, didn't know that card existed, blah blah blah. And you get those types of responses, which is good, because that that puts you in a knowledge advantage, right? Because you know about these cards, which is why you went and used them, because you know about them, right? Some people will be surprised when you play a Bodyguard Legend for free, and they'll be like, what? And it's a blocker? They'll be surprised that you can play it for free. It's a 15 game body, right? And it's a blocker, that'll catch some people off guard. I typically tend to just play, Legend, swing with it, and sometimes catch people off guard, because, one turn I might just drop it, don't attack with it, and end my turn, and my opponent's like, oh damn, why didn't he attack? And then when they attack, I'm like, okay, block. I'm like, oh, he's a blocker? It's like, yeah. And that's the thing. Okay, give me a second. Okay, you want to be an asshole. But yeah, like I said, it's like, playing stuff that people are not used to seeing, it's going to throw them off. And that's a good thing, because you don't want your deck to be predictable. You don't want your opponent to know what your deck can and cannot do, because then they will use that knowledge and information against you. right? You want to have the advantage, and this game is all about advantage, right? It's all about you can do more than your opponent can. Your cards are better than your opponent, and the list goes on and on, right? It's all about advantage. It's not about balance and fairness. There's always some weird nonsense that I be hearing a lot of times. People want things to be fair and balanced, and it's like, no. In a card game, definitely not. It's not about fair and balance, right? It's all about being unfair, unbalanced, right? OP, having cards that are stronger and better than what your opponent's playing, right? You want your cards to be better than your opponent. You want your cards to be stronger. You want your deck's win con to be better than your opponent's win con, right? Because you want it to be faster, right? Being able to beat your opponent on turn 4 more often than not, right? Consistently, while they still try to wait to get to like turn 6 to try to turn into ties you or something, or try to pull off their win con. Let's say their win con's turn 5, but your win con's turn 4, or even turn 3, right? In this deck, you can go off turn 3, because Pan on turn 3 with the leader's awaken ability can output a combo where you can put out like about six double strike attackers, and with the Napa super combos, you can easily get them up to 25k double strike, and just swing 25k double strike, 25k double strike, 25k double strike, right? Most decks can't do that unless they're using this strategy, right? This unique strategy, these cards combined together to produce this outcome. Most decks can't do this, so that uniqueness, that fact that you have a combination of cards that you use that most people don't use together, but you do use them together, you're going to get a result that's way different than what everybody else gets, and that gives you the advantage, right? Unique equals advantage. So this is why, I tend to focus on unique. Back to the whole like best of 3, best of 1. It's very important to win game 1, whether it be best of 3 or best of 1. And having a unique deck, when it comes to best of 1, for example, makes it hard for your opponent pre-side, because there's the pre-side best of 1, where your opponent can side cards against your deck, right? That's why they have a side deck. They have cards specifically for the matchup, but you want to make sure that they can't side against you, right? That they can't match up to you, right? You want to be unmatchable, right? You want to be uncontestable, unbeatable, right? So having a unique deck that your opponent can't easily side deck against, especially best of 1, they don't really know how your deck functions. They're just guessing. They'll look at your leader, be like, oh, okay, I know what this deck does. I've seen this deck before. And then when they play you, it's like, oh shit, I've never seen this deck before, because this is doing totally different stuff. Exactly. That's the power of being unique. There's very few drawbacks to being unique, but there's a lot of pros, right? A lot of benefits to being unique. Because again, you can do what others can't, and that's always better than doing what everybody else can. You don't want to be like everybody else. You want to be better. Michael Jordan's Michael Jordan for a reason, because he's not like everyone else, and everyone else is not like him, which is why he's Michael Jordan, right? So you want to be you, right? You want to be who you are, and who you are should be better than everybody else, right? Because you should put in the effort to be better, different, to do what others can't do, and you more likely have the ability to do what others can't do. Obviously, one of my skill sets, right, when it comes to the card game or any card game, is deck building. Not only that, is also being able to take concepts and ideas from other card games and translate them over to other card games. So a lot of the stuff that I do in Dragon Ball Super is inspired. Obviously most of it from Yu-Gi-Oh, but definitely a lot of it is from Magic, especially the energy aspect. Being able to combine cards in combination. So, of course, comboing cards is something that's common in a lot of card games, but energy-based combos, making sure you have enough energy to play all the cards you want to play all together to get some really cool effects and really cool results out of them. I learned that from playing Magic. I've done a lot of combos, like infinite combos and stuff like that. So, like I said, unique is very important because it drastically increases your chances of winning, just mainly because your opponent can't predict your moves, your lines of play. One of the things you do as a player is try to predict your opponent's plays, right? Your opponent's lines of play. Take into account how many attacks they have, how many attacks can you stop, how many attacks could you out combo, that kind of stuff. Like when you're in the defensive position, you're trying to figure out, like looking at your opponent's board, like, okay, obviously they have a leader swing, they have a unison, so that's going to be 2 attacks right there. They have a battle card, so that's going to be an attack. They might play another battle card, so that'd be 4th attack, and they could overwhelm, right? That could be a possibility. And let's say one more thing, they might have something they could play for free through a card effect, let's say. So that's 6 potential attacks. 6 potential attacks, on your opponent's turn, they have to take to account. But if it turns out your opponent's like, oh wait, you can do 8 attacks and they're all double strike, as an example, right? 8 attacks and they're all double strikes. I calculated maybe 6 single damage attacks. I didn't expect 8 attacks, let alone all of them be double strike, right? As an example, it's like, damn, your leader, your battle cards, right, your unison, they all have double strike. That's a lot. That's something unexpected. It's like, yeah, that unexpected factor, that one little detail, that one little extra thing that you're doing can make a huge difference. Even the idea of just playing a whole bunch of 1-drops, like just playing a whole bunch of cards that cost 1 energy, right? 1 costs unisons, 1 costs extra cards, 1 costs battle cards, right? I said it right, extra, unison, battle card, right? Yeah, 1 costs everything. That means turn 1 you can play 1 card, right? Turn 2 you can play 2 cards. Turn 3 you can play 3 cards. Turn 4 you can play 4 cards. You could do more than the most people if you're playing a whole bunch of 1-drops. You could play multiple cards. You could play a card and still have energy up, right? Turn 2 you could play a 1-drop card and still have 1 energy for a negate, right? So you could play a 1 energy battle card and then still have 1 energy for a negate, right? Turn 3 you have 2 energies. You could play 2 1-drop cards, like maybe a unison and a battle card, and still have 1 energy for a negate. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta think that way. So something like that, you can literally have a deck with a whole bunch of 1-drops, and that be your deck's strategy, and that will make it unique, right? You can do I've done tons of different unique stuff. I've always liked the idea of no energy deck. Basically, you just never charge energy. You just play a whole bunch of free play stuff, and the whole strategy of the game is that you just don't charge energy. Or the 1 energy charge strategy, where you just charge 1 energy and then for the rest of the game you don't charge, because that 1 energy is more than enough to play a couple cards. Because obviously you'll have some free play stuff, but for some stuff that you have to pay for, like Champa, Isapin Kai, for example, that stuff, you'll pay. Maybe you have a negate, like a sparking negate, where you could pay 1 energy to negate, or you play forage free for a sparking ability, so you could potentially play 2 negates, right? 1 for 1 energy and 1 for free because it's a sparking negate, right? That kind of stuff. Obviously in that type of deck, I would use obviously stuff like Nappa, because I could super combo, because I could play him for free. Bodyguard Lizard, because I could play him for free. I could play that Vegeta in the image, where you combo 1 energy and then bang, play it afterwards, and it's a 15k body. Obviously I could play the Testing Opposition, because I could play it for free by taking a life, right? So I don't have to ever pay 2 energy. I could just take a life to play it. And of course, there's some battle cards you could just pay 1 energy and negate an attack and then play the battle card. So those are options. So you could play a lot, with literally just 1 energy. You could play with 1 energy. Of course, the more energy you have, the more things you can play that requires energy. But to play a lot of free play stuff, along with a couple cards that does require a little bit of energy, at least just 1 energy, you benefit in that regards. Especially if you draw from the leader, you draw maybe from some of the cards you play, so that you will have a shitload of card advantage because you're never charging beyond that first energy, never charging anything else. Everything else you just draw, keep. So that was the idea of the 1 energy deck. That's a way of being unique, right? Doing something that everybody else isn't doing, because everybody else have to charge every turn. You're playing a deck that doesn't have to charge every turn, just one time. Charge 1 time and then you're good for the rest of the game, right? And you want to be like that. Shit, I want to be at the point where I don't charge energy, period. That'd be awesome, right? Have a deck where I never charge. Because then that's just card advantage, just by never charging. That way, every turn when I draw, that's a draw. I keep it. I swing with the leader. Draw. I keep it. 2 cards per turn. As opposed to 1 card per turn, because the other card I'm constantly charging, right? Why charge cards, right? You want to keep those cards. And then you want to not combo, right? You want to make sure all your cards are strong and they can do damage without comboing. So that way you don't have to give up, card advantage and keep those cards in your hands. So having a lot of cards, obviously, card advantage, and you can take advantage of that card advantage, right? Ironically, just for 1 energy and 4 cards in your drop, 4 more, you can overwhelm and play Mirror Creator Absorb, and that's a very powerful overwhelm, And then when you attack with him, right, dump your whole hand into his attack. He's already strong, but you can make him stronger by just comboing a whole bunch of battle cards from your hand, right, and just boom, 220k to your opponent's face or something like that, right? But anyway, but you get my point. Is the idea of like being unique, has huge advantages, and that's one of my strategies. Just being unique, being unique for the sake of being unique, right? Playing a card that is similar to another card, the substitution, right? As a budget player, you definitely tend to play unique decks, mainly because you're playing budget, right? So your decks are going to be a lot different than somebody else's. Like I could have a Broly BR deck and not have any of the TPs in it. I could have a King Piccolo deck and not have a lot of the TPs in it, right? One, I don't really like most of those cards, most of the TPs anyway, so it's not like I would, use them. But a lot of people do like them. A lot of people feel that the decks need the TPs. Like, all right, to each their own. I don't, but to each their own. But there probably is a rare occasion where maybe there's a TP that I'm like, yeah, this TP is awesome, and definitely I want it in the deck, and definitely put in work in the deck. But I could always find something else, something to substitute, because ultimately what matters to me anyway is a win con, right? Is the idea of making sure that I win through the strategy that I'm trying to win through. So, the first 4 damage is the easiest, next 2 requires a little effort, and the last 2 is the hardest. So since it's not that hard to deal 6 to 7 damage to my opponent, for me anyway, all I have to do is finish them off with that 1 last damage. All I have to do is focus on putting cards into my deck that can help facilitate that, right? That can help deal that last damage, whether it be burn, whether it be, something that has dual attack, they can attack more than once, so that I can try to get past through my opponent's, free negates, then hopefully get my attack to the combo step, and then just dump my hand into it and just end my opponent out with that 1 swift attack. Of course, going tall, going wide strategies, any way to try to get to the point of dealing that damage is what I'm focusing on. That's what everybody should be focusing on, is dealing the last damage. Because there'll be sometimes I'll see a card effect that's pretty good. I'm like, ooh, this could do 6 damage. which is decent. But let's say like it's an early game strategy. It's like, okay, early game, I could use it to do 6 damage, but that's it. After that, I can't use it to finish my opponent off. So it's not that good for some reason. it's only good early game, but it's not good late game. So it's like, well, I need something good late game. So it's like, all right, so I won't use that card or strategy. Like some cards have potential, especially early game. Some cards are really good. If you could play them early, they're really good. But late game, it's like, not so good. This is better early game than late game. But because this has 5 costs and above, it costs 5 or more to play, it's a late game card, but it's not really that good late game. It would have been amazing early game. Being 30k crit would be awesome early game. Being 30k crit late game with dual attack, not so great. It's decent, not bad. Don't get me wrong, just not great. I'd rather do something else. So that's the thing. Once you get to a certain point where you play a certain way, like where you have a certain play style, what you play doesn't even matter as much as long as you just have a win con, right? You have, I just made a video about it having a win con, right? How a win con is more important than anything else, because no matter what you play, especially for me, the way I've been playing for a long while, all I really need is a win con, preferably one that I could play sooner than later, right? Most of the win cons that I've found in the game tend to be turn 5 and higher, so it gets a little bit harder to use them. There's some 4 drop win cons, technically some 3 drop win cons, but it takes setting up to try to pull them off. It's not impossible, don't get me wrong. I've obviously created lines of play where you can turn 4 burn your opponent for 2. I've done that before, but most win cons where they're just like you just play the card by itself to win out the game tend to be turn 5 and higher. Most other stuff requires extra steps, like extra cards, like you gotta combine cards to try to get them out sooner than later. Not saying I want Bandai to give me turn 2, turn 3 win con cards, but I'm not against it. But I'm just saying it's not like I expect them to. I like a challenge, so I'll make cards work, in combination with one another to win out. And that's the thing, when you don't have, cards you can play turn 2, turn 3, right? That can just flat out win the game by themselves. Then obviously that's where strategy and being unique and coming up with a line of play where you use your leader and a unison and a battle card and an overrealm, and you combine all that together to create a win condition, right? To create a scenario where you win, right? Just like the X-hit strategy where back in the day it was just like Bodyguard, Ledger, Champa, maybe an overrealm. If I comboed enough cards to get 4 cards in a drop, then I will overrealm Waking Warrior Bardic and then get that double strike go through, so I could potentially do 5, maybe 6-ish damage. But then Nappa super combo came into play, so that allowed you to go beyond 6 potential damage. And depending on the leader you use, the leader could potentially do damage. Like when I used the burn leader, Gohan burn leader, where you burn by bursting and taking a life, and then swing with it, so that potentially another damage. So you could potentially do 2 damage with the leader, and then Bodyguard Legic, right? Nappa, right? That's another attack right there. And if you throw in a Champa, then that'd be essentially a total of 5 damage. But if you throw in the Saiyan Scions, that's essentially 3 damage just with the Saiyan Scion, because the unison will attack and the 2 skillets will come out and attack. So that right there will be 5 Legic and super combos, so that'd be 7. So that'd be about 7 damage turn 1 just with the Bodyguard Electric, Nappa, and the same Scion with a leader that can either does double strike or can burn your opponent for 1 damage, and then you can swing with it. And that right there adds up to 7 damage turn 1. Obviously, your opponent can try to out combo or whatever. And that's not even to mention the fact that you can overrun. So it's 7, right? Then you overrun with something that has, double strike, right? And then bang, that's 2 extra damage. So that's 9. So you could do potentially 9 damage out turn 1. And if your opponent doesn't out combo most of your attacks, you can OTK them, right? You can just 1 turn kill them, right? First turn kill. No, turn 1 kill. Or OTK, either way. You get the idea. And that's the thing, if your opponent doesn't. Imagine if there was an effect of a leader that says when you have 2 or less energy, your opponent can't combo. Then my turn 1, herp or derp combo, my X-hit combo strategy will just be busted because my opponent can't out combo the attack. So it just whole bunch of attacks turn 1, right? Just need to output 8 damage and bang, GG, because my opponent can't out combo any of my attacks. Right? Hopefully they get lucky, they get a free negate, right? A testing opposition or something like that, and try to survive that that turn 1 kill strategy. The TOK, the talk, turn 1 kill. But that's the thing about being unique, is that when there are new stuff added to the game, that further increases the power of your uniqueness, right? Being unique gives you strength, but then when new stuff comes out, especially new generic stuff, can further increase the power of your unique strategy, and further you'll just be further ahead of everybody who's playing whatever. Because being unique makes you unlimited, because there's infinite possibilities when you're being unique. When you're not being unique, right, you're doing what everybody else is doing, or you're just doing, or you're limiting yourself to your gamma deck, right? And gamma deck can only limit, already has a restriction. It prevents you from playing a lot of stuff in the deck. So playing gamma 1, gamma 2, it's already restricting you, and that's fine if you have no problem playing under restrictions. But as a Hatchiac player myself, I'm used to being restricted, right, with the Hatchiac leader's effect. But of course, I learned to overcome the restrictions, right? My limit, right? The leader, it creates a limit, but as a player, you should always try to find a way to surpass the limits. So I try to make sure that my Hatchiac deck hurts my opponent more than it would ever hurt me, as an example, right? So that's part why I create so many different Hatchiac builds, because you never know, whichever one I feel like playing my green Hatchiac build, bang, play it, and no one's going to know what it really does. They're going to be surprised once I start charging yellow energy, right? Or let's say I do a multicolor version. Well, we need some multicolor unisons. Yes, we do need some multicolor unisons. That'd be nice, because then I can't play multicolor Hatchiac builds. Anyway, the point is that I can do things differently. Especially if I'm using a lot of 1-drop unisons. I could play a yellow unison in one turn, and then the next turn, all right, swap it out with a blue unison, and they'd be like, oh my god, what the hell's going on? What you doing with this deck? Stuff you don't know and stuff you're not prepared for, and that's the advantage that I have. And I'm taking advantage of that. Especially when you play the same leader a lot, you definitely want to be unique. Especially as a budget player, you want to be unique. You don't, because plus after a while you might get bored. If you play a certain deck for a long period of time and you keep winning with the same cards over and over again, you're kind of going to get a little bored. So you want to spice it up, right? You want to change it up a bit, change a couple cards, change the way you play. Let's say you normally play aggro with your deck. All right, change it up and try control. Try to play a little more of a counter attack type of build, and try something different. Maybe just change it up and add some mill cards or some hand control, and just try things differently. Mix and match, combine mill with hand control, or aggro with hand control, or aggro mill, like, you know what I mean, like control mill, obviously. People who play mill tend to combine it with control, obviously, but you get the idea. Is you can mix it up, right? Aggro mill, like I said, right? Aggro mill, you can mix it up and try different things. I mean, mill burn, that'll be an option. Aggro burn is what I tend to do a lot. Like, I go aggro to deal a lot of damage, and then to finish the game I use burn, so aggro burn is the way I normally play. But I've been trying to do other things, other different ways of winning through mill. I got a Janemba build I'm working on. Let me give you a little sneak peek, because it's right here. There you go. Hopefully you got it. It's a little sneak peek of the Janemba mill deck that I'm working on. Need to test it out a little bit, make sure because there's like loops and engines in there. Try to make sure the strategy is lined up. What else? But you see what I'm saying? The idea of being unique. I might as well pull it up again. Being unique, right? Because you might see other people playing, Janemba Bill, and they might have a lot of counter plays. Might do things totally different than me. So yeah, I use this as an example. You see, because since most of the board wipes that I'm used to playing in blue tend to be 5 drops. You can't play 5 costs in Janemba, right? So you see, I'm already being restricted. So I have to find a way to surpass the restriction, a way to bypass. Since most of my blue board wipes tend to be 5 drops, so I can't use them. I had to find some alternatives, right? And that's where the uniqueness comes in, right? Finding different stuff to do it. For example, Xeno Cosmic Unison, mainly using it for its -5, not using it for ramp. Might play and use it to ramp into something, but that's not the purpose. The purpose is to play for 5, -5 board wipe. So this is a way I bypass the whole I can't have a 5 cost in my deck. Play something you can pay 5 for, right? So that's what Xeno is there for board wiping. This neighborhood is funny. All right, so 4-drop Gogeta, which is a 20k blocker. He has the order that when you play this card, choose all of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost 3 or less, and send them to the bottom of your opponent's deck in any order. So it only does 3 or less, but most decks tend to have a whole bunch of like 3 or less battle cards. I mean, from a lot of the decks I've played against, they had a lot of 3 drops. So this is good, not great. And I was like, damn, I need something better, because what if my opponent has a whole bunch of like 6 and 7s and 5s, like 4s, like a whole bunch of high cost battle cards? How can I get rid of them when I can't play like the high cost 5 drop board wipes? And that's where the Xeno came in. So I was like, oh, here's a solution, right? So somebody was, because there's a possibility no one uses Xeno in Janemba, so that would make this unique, right? It's like, oh shit, I've never seen anybody play Xeno in Janemba. What you need the ramp for? I'm not ramping. Or if I do, I'm just ticking it up just so I can get to the -5. But it's like, I don't really need the ramp. I'm just, ramping up. Mainly, I'm just going to play this for 5 and, dropping it. I'm not going to put it on the board and tick it up, right? Trying to get it to 5. I'll just pay 5, drop it, -5, boom, the usual. Or pay for, play it, attach a copy, so it gets another marker, and then -5, right? That type of stuff. So it could be a turn 4 board wipe if you play it right. Of course, we got the Vegeta Ready Rumble. We got the Gohan Babies Minion, Floodgate Defense. And then the idea is you play them. We also have Pageman, which can negate an attack and bounce a battle card on my opponent's side field back to their hand. So it could potentially prevent 2 attacks. So that's good, right? I could potentially stop 2 attacks for 2 energy. So it's similar to the Chill's Army Reinforcement, which can negate an attack, make a blocker. So I could potentially stop 2 attacks. Goku and Vegeta Saiyan kind of works similar to Senzu Bean. I can negate an attack and technically Senzu Bean. Powered people, same thing, negate an attack and potentially Senzu Bean. So, floodgate defense. So there's a good amount of floodgate defense in here, obviously. You're going to want as a Janemba player. Can't play Oceanus because she's a 5-drop, so I had to find some alternatives. That's where Vegeta Ready Rumble automatically replaced her. And then, of course, Paicon and Gohan kind of work as pseudo Oceanuses. And then the fact that I have the Kabuto Kai's attendant, part of what makes the deck unique, right, is the fact that I can use this to bounce my Vegeta Ready Rumble, my Gohan, or my Paicon back to my hand, replay them back to my hand, replay them back to my hand, replay them, right? So that way it's reusable, floodgate negates. So pretty much every turn I'm going to be what is it called, Baby Hatchjack. Since I can't play Baby Hatchjack in this deck because he's an 8-drop, these basically act as my Baby Hatchjacks. And the fact that I can bounce a play, bounce play, I get Baby Hatchjack every turn. So that makes this deck unique because it's mimicking the effects of a card that I can't play in the deck, right? So anybody who's playing Janemba wouldn't have Baby Hatchjack. But if they're, I'm pretty sure some, Hatchjack builds do have the Vegeta, maybe even the Gohan, obviously. But they'll probably have other stuff like Dimension Magic and other things similar to that. Whis Cohesion, you get the idea. They probably play a totally different build. So my build should be pretty unique enough. But the way I play this deck, as well as that, I don't use it. I don't play it to mill. I use it to control, and that's where the Gawasu comes into play. Because the idea is, I swing with the leader, right? Make my opponent mill 2 cards. Normally, I would use Gawasu to manipulate the top 3 cards of my opponent's deck, then swing to mill, so I can mill, my opponent's good cards. But instead, what I in this version, the idea is to mill 2 cards, right? So randomly get rid of 2 cards, then play Gawasu and manipulate the top 3. So that way I'm doing stuff to the top 5 cards of my opponent's deck, milling 2, and then manipulating the next 3. So mill, manipulate 3, mill, manipulate 3, and just keep doing that. And that's the strategy. So that's the main thing I'm going to be doing there. And then Kabuto Kai, get him on there to bounce my, right off the bat, it'll be Paicon, but then I'll level up to Gohan, then I'll level up to Vegeta Ready to Rumble, right? So every turn that when I get to add it, play an energy, I'm able to go up the, cost-wise of what I'm going to play and bounce. Being able to bounce Gohan back to your hand because he has Servant, bounce him back to hand, and play him on your opponent's turn, swing on your turn, bounce back to hand, play on your opponent's turn, swing on your turn. So you have a reusable, 25k beat stick. Obviously, it's a strategy right there in itself. So there's that. Kabuto Kai does bounce at 3 costs or higher, 3 costs or low on your opponent's side, field back to hand. So this will help you, control their board. Sorry, as well as, bounce your stuff to reuse your stuff. So, and this will help you keep your hand size because since you're using stuff, you have all these leftover cards in your hands that you're not using, so your hand's just gonna get bigger and bigger. That's what she said, right? Because you're not really using every card in your hand, right? You're just using the same cards over and over again, so you're conserving your hand. So you should have a pretty thick hand with this deck. Plus the leader, when it swings, you draw and then your opponent mills too. So you're always going to have cards in your hands. And then of course everything else here is some spice, right? I got the Shenron cards, the negative energy explosion cards in here. So we can do some really cool stuff against Unisons in case we got to deal with our opponent's Unison. As well as warping any problematic battle cards. And then this has crit. The Janemba Unison can +1 to get crit. So we can take advantage of critting our opponent's life and apply pressure just mainly through crit. Anything that we have this double strike in the deck, we'll use that against our opponent's Unisons to knock off multiple markers. because I mean, just having the Majin Buu unison, which has double strike, and then having this Shinron negative energy that also has double strike, swinging with both of them against an opponent's unison will knock off 4 markers off of them real easy. You could potentially knock off 6 markers if you remove a marker, right? Spirit Boost from your unison to restand Shinron and then swing with the Shinron again, right? And then bang, you can knock off 6 markers off of a unison, and that could definitely be very helpful, especially if you go up against the GT deck, because the unison just gets shitload of markers, and they try to take advantage of that, so you can potentially knock off a whole bunch of markers and slow them down. Obviously, you mainly want to use this against unisons you can easily kill through the strategy. That unison would probably be hard to kill through attacking, but you could try, right? You can at least slow it down. So there's, so obviously there's stuff in here to deal with certain potential threats, certain unisons that might be problematic, and then of course, like I said, control. So this is more of a mill control deck than it is, or hand control deck more than it is a mill deck. It's just that mill is part of it, so you could win through mill, you could win through just dealing a whole bunch of crit damage, or you could just, win mainly because your opponent's hand is so shitty because you keep manipulating their hands and keep making it hard for them to draw anything good. And whenever they do have something good they could play, well, they'll play, but you'll just, get rid of it, you'll negate it, warp it, all that good stuff. Board wipe it, right? So once they play good stuff, you just board wipe it, and then bang. Now they have no more good stuff, and you just keep, manipulating the top card of their decks, making it hard for them to draw anything good. And since when you do deal damage to their life, you're critting it, so they're not getting anything from that. So it's a lot of spam. And that's the thing about being unique, because you could do stuff that most decks don't do, right? You have a strategy that's different than, the typical deck strategies, because most decks are just, either trying to be aggro, or they're trying, like if there's an archer, they're trying to be aggro, or they might try to be controlled by having a whole bunch of counterplays, like the baby deck. It tries to do this whole control thing, so it'll try to, the cooler mill, right, try to do the mill thing. So there's a lot of decks that will try to do, there are archetypes that will try to do certain things, right? Arrival from your energy, arrival for your drop, that'll be a thing, right? Arrivaling from your drop, even playing from stuff from your drop is a thing, right? So that kind of stuff is the kind of stuff you'll be dealing with. And that'd be the end of the video.